Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from a severely burnt down building on the Pine Hills Palace, or what was of it. I'm here in the smoking remains of the Extreme Studios just west of Orlando, Florida. RDV, I know you're from the great Midwest and people are nice, but holy hell, I had a backdraft situation tonight. What are we going to do?
Well, the first thing is quit with these cringe puns. Because you're burning down the live stream here. No one's watching.
As long as I'm not burning down the house. You know, when we put the poll up last week on Tuesday, we've been doing not necessarily specifically 90s movies recently because we've just went through a big martial arts phase this year. We wanted to get some 90s action stuff in there.
Yeah.
I inadvertently, subconsciously biased it towards Kurt Russell, which is not intentional because we had this and we had a couple other films on there too. But this is by far the clear runaway. And it's a movie that you almost had to tell me, hey, remember that movie Backdraft? I'm like, well, which one is that? Oh, the one where you actually see the picture of the backdraft blowing up. Oh, yeah. Kurt Russell in it. Oh, yeah, it did. And a lot of great actors. Oh, yeah, it did. You remember the movie? Yeah, not really. That's how I felt after rewatching it. It's been that long.
Donald Sutherland's character has a small part in there, too. You know, he's not big part of being a firefighter like that. He's just a criminal that's out for parole that basically was starting fires. He's not a nice guy. He's kind of crazy. And Robert Deniro plays basically the fire chief inspector, basically and he ends up working up with William Baldwin's character. William Baldwin playing one of the two sons, whose firefighter father was killed in a backdraft. Pretty much, one of the gas line exploded at a normal fire, and William Baldwin's character was the little boy that came with them, and saw his father die. And Kurt Russell has now pretty much become Bull,
the man.
The nickname. He is basically taking his father's footsteps, being a firefighter. Both William Baldwin wanted to be a firefighter too. Now they don't really get along, but they're now together under the same roof until it gets to the point where Kurt Russell becomes such of a dick to him that he decides to take up this alderman who's running for mayor, take up his offer to work as a liaison to him in the fire chief's office with Robert De Niro. And mainly, it's only happened because two things. There's a hot blonde that works for the alderman that he has a thing for, and she has a thing for him. They end up doing it in the top of a firefighter truck, in the fire station while the guys are sleeping. It's a lot of cool stuff. Kurt Russell is a deadbeat kind of drunk, pretty much. He sees his ex-wife at a retirement for one of the firefighters. He starts drinking. Gets in a fight with her new boyfriend or whatever, and then after that, this causes. They said there's so much drama going on with his family. William Baldwin, with him leaving, causes Kurt Russell to start self-reflecting. He goes back to Rebecca de Mornay's house, and he's working. And they have a talk there. Jennifer Jason Leigh, I guess, is the girl, the blonde that William Baldwin's dating. I didn't recognize her first, but Rebecca de Mornay was another big hot actress that was going on in the 90s and then just fizzled out.
80s to 90s, sir.
Yeah, 80s, 90s. But overall, though, watching this with Kurt Russell's a joy, no matter what you watch him in. His facial expression, the way he acts in here, too. William Baldwin, he's one of the two Baldwin brothers I loved watching early movies. Him and Steven didn't always have the good movies, but him and William and Steven were always great. Alec is the one I really never cared for his movies, but that's beside the point.
Early Alec Baldwin really kind of put them on the map with things, and then these other guys, because of that, I agree that even though they've got the Baldwin name, they're distinguishable in their own way. So they're not bad. They're not just, I'm related to so and so. That's how I got in here.
William, it's the main story. It's William Baldwin. He's the rookie. He's coming in here. He's going to work with his brother. His brother pushes him too hard. He ends up working with Robert De Niro, and then they're trying to solve these arson murders. Throughout this whole movie, you're like, something's going on. Someone's killing people. We had a guy burned to death in his car. And then there's a guy in the theater, old school classic theater. I love this scene. The theater scene, and then you see the smoke come out of the door. The guy's like, "What's going on?" And he opens the door, and he's gone. Now they do show some charred bodies in here. So if you're not a big fan of that, either was William Baldwin's character. He kind of couldn't handle either. It's kind of gross. But Robert De Niro's character in here, seeing a young Robert De Niro in this, and seeing what he does in the movie is always entertaining. The guy may be a jerk in real life right now, whatever. You don't agree with his politics, whatever. Like watching this back in the '90s, where none of the real world stuff matters. It's just like I said, this was a fun movie for me. This is my second time watching it. I owned it on DVD, old school DVD where they had the cardboard thing, cover flips over and snaps the plastic. Yeah. I had fun with this. The guy, it does feel, I mean, now I'm not a firefighter. I don't know how much realistic this is, but they explain the science between the backdraft and so explosions. And it's revealed that the guy is using a magnesium accelerant to basically cause explosions. And it's just cool, the pyrotechnics they use in this. Now, of course, there's probably some green screening here too, but those guys are wearing the gear, which is heavy. I gotta say, if you're an actor, you're putting on that firefighting gear with the tank and the jacket and having to carry those hoses, that's real.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, a couple of interesting things about the movie to me itself is the historical part to it, because obviously, as a young man at my time seeing it there, and you a teenager at the point when you saw it, this is one of the things when you saw the trailers, you're like, hey, that looks like a good film, and had a lot of actors in it. And the interesting thing about it to me was that you and I have mentioned this before. We've recently done Terminator 2 review here on the Extreme Movie Show, talked about how impressive a vision it was at the time. So you're starting to see a lot of the big budget type movies, and by that I mean the special effects kinds of things like a Terminator 2. You're wondering how that's going to go, because like in our also recent review of, say, Volcano, there's a mixed bag in terms of CGI and practical effects, and so practical effects can still be good, but you got to learn how to mix them where it doesn't look so bad. And I thought this movie attracted a lot of people to it because the trailers, it's something we've never really talked much about is how trailers have changed, whether they show the whole movie or you can guess, or they tease you. To me, the whole idea of a trailer was to basically give you a taste of it, make you want to come and see it, but not tell you everything. And I think things are different. This movie went, Ron Howard from Happy Days, that guy, he's a serious director. We got to get him with all these actors. But here's something else that's different. You had a big amount of what I like to call Hollywood money put into making the government look good with agents and stuff like that. We've barely scratched the surface on that. Technically, firefighting is a government job, but it's usually like with policemen, who we've talked about for decades in movies, look like buffoons for the most part. You put Kurt Russell in a very leading role with a bunch of other people, and the guy's an actor, but you got to say it, at the time, Kurt Russell, loved him to death, personal favorite of mine, John Carpenter mark and all that. He played Elvis. You always thought of him as a B-level guy. But when you see him with everybody else, you're like, no, he's not. He's that good. But there's something about the everyman kind of thing that Kurt Russell has that attracts you to it. Where you look at this movie would have probably done it did very well. Would have done even better. But again, that year you had Terminator, you had Silence of the Lambs, you had all these movies coming out there, like, wow, this was still a really good year for movies, but people just forget about this one a little bit for whatever reason. But to your point, if you had VHS and you went to go rent it out, that would be an unfortunate experience, because until you got it, like say on DVD or saw it as a replay or in a theater, you're missing out on the visual quality of it. Because that's one thing that is very attractive, is they respect the part about here that they're dealing with, which is fire. Yes, it's not going to be believable. Having known personally a few firemen over my lifetime and talking about them about things, that gear is no joke. The training they do just physically to learn how to do stuff and roll around in the dark and all that, not a joke. But this is a lot like Volcano and some of the shows we've talked about the 90s with whether animals attack or whatever. You get a little bit of science behind it, but not too much, just enough to know what's going on, where you're not talked down to a lot. It wasn't incomprehensible like it was in the 80s. So it makes it more approachable, right? And so I think Ron Howard's best thing about it is there's nothing horrible about the preview. There's not a lot of talking, going on, yelling, shouting, screaming. You see people, and really, again, it's a story about people that happen to be firefighters involved in something dangerous. So that's what Ron Howard does very well. So I don't consider it like an action adventure type film. No chance.
No. Did you notice the who plays the father in the beginning of this movie? You're watching it?
Give it to me.
It's Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell plays the firefighter Dennis, Kathy going in there.
Oh,
okay. If you pause, if you watch closely in the fire truck when the kid's in there with them, you could tell it's Kurt Russell the way it is. And they put a mustache on him where he had a mustache going from like movies from Tombstone or whatever.
Right.
So it was interesting because I'm like, because if you don't notice it the first time, you're like, okay, it's so quick you wouldn't even notice it. But I watched this the second time watching this. I was watching like, okay, I'm like, who's the father? And so I'm watching it. I'm like, and all it's like, because it's a brief glimpse you see of him. It's come on, kid, let's go. And he has the manners of Kurt Russell. The happy-go-lucky, stuff. Kurt Russell, he's like whenever his movies. I was like, that's Kurt Russell. And I'm like, and sure enough, as I paused it, I'm like, I looked at the credits. I'm like, oh, it actually is him. He plays 2 roles here. So Steve, and then he ends up playing Stephen, the son, the one who was left at the fire station. Because William Baldwin's character was the one that went with them, and they did a photograph of the kid with holding his father's hat that had blown out, an explosion, because they had a gas line in the apartment building. But so this movie it wasn't a flop. It actually did some money. I was looking at it. What did it say it was? The budget was probably around like 40 million they're estimating, and then it came out to 152.4. So roughly 152 million dollars. So it made its money back. And the great thing about that is you didn't have to worry about streaming, so you made all the money. Nowadays with streaming, like and that's another story. But there's a really cool outfit for those who want to learn about why a lot of movies suck today. Look at the Matt Damon interview talking about just the way how streaming is affected now. Everything used to be DVD sales. Now streaming kills any money they make.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because this movie, it's pretty. I mean, you've got storylines, a couple of the family stuff, the pyromaniac, as it were, or whatever, and a lot of great actors in it too. I don't know if it's particularly smart, but it's it came at a time where these kind of movies were made to be put on screen, and JT Walsh is in here, right? He's the political angle guy, and we would see him and Kurt Russell. I think it's not Backdraft, where he plays the driver whose wife gets kidnapped or whatever. We reviewed that recently too, and JT Walsh is great in that. So you're getting some slightly different names that in the 90s are going to show up a lot too. And you mentioned the Baldwins already, but I just, Ron Howard makes nice films. He's a nice guy. They're good films. They're fun. They're family, but they're kind of like saccharine sweet, like an E.T. Me. Sure, you remember them, but at the end of the day, do they mean anything? And it's not a knock. It's just that's his style, and we all have what we're attracted to, which is independent necessarily of how good or quality the film is. This movie is very good looking. It's I've talked about practical effects till we're blue in the face about how we'd rather see that, especially in martial arts, fist fights, gunplay, and all that, rather than CGI stuff. And so here they did a real great job of making you fear the fire, respect it, whatever you want to call it, where you just think like, yeah, or whatever. So, it was tough to deal with.
I want to point out, if you watch this movie, I've seen this once before. So I'm trying to think of like Robert Niro. Obviously there's someone going to murder people, and we always go towards who's the chief inspector. That's what Robert De Niro, and Robert De Niro is not. He's played a crooked person before. He's played Righteous Kill. We've seen it before.
Right.
So I'm thinking in my mind, like, is it Robert De Niro going around killing people and stuff? And then this movie also too. Spoilers for those if you haven't watched this. Like I said, you guys are watching kind of like a spoiler. We've already told you a lot. If you don't want to know about the ending, kind of like I'll give you 3, 2, 1. I thought it was going to turn out to be Robert De Niro. It wasn't. It was Scott Glenn was going around as the one that was working for, the alderman.
You bastard.
And the other thing that shocked me.
He's so likable, a bad monkey.
the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that, there's a big tragic death in this as it is. Stephen's character, Stephen, played by Kurt Russell, dies in the end, along with Scott Glenn's character. And then like I said, that was tragic. And I'm like, well, they have 2 brothers. If both brothers survive at the end, it wouldn't be such a good movie. I think that's what probably sold the movie was the fact that it was Kurt Russell dies. I was like, what the heck? Sometimes that can hurt a movie, but it actually didn't hurt the movie at all. Him dying at the end, and then William Baldwin's character pretty much getting like the one up on the mayor alongside Robert De Niro. I guess would be mayor. And yeah, that's kind of how it just kind of wraps up like that. But I'm just like, wow, Donald Sutherland is he kind of plays coming like a guy in a loony bin getting ready. It's been 6 years.
He's been doing it for 30 years now.
Yeah,
40 years.
Yeah, but they're gonna parole him, and then Robert De Niro seeing it with him. He's like, "What's this? Oh, did you enjoy killing the women and the daughter?" He's like, "Yeah." He smiles. He's like, "We'll see you next year, buddy," because that shows, and not honestly, that's a jab at the parole system because I wouldn't put it
in
past.
the 90s.
Oh, it definitely changed in the 90s. But I mean, like, if they're gonna allow people because they have a psychiatrist there, and they're like, there's a role model. We just saw in a different movie, Terminator. He's like clearly a much smarter person, and with Sarah Connor, it's like you're smart. I'm not gonna let you out. No. So it's interesting to see two different movies with psychiatrists and how they interact with the characters. But regardless of though, Donald Sutherland's character was awesome. RMP, he just died this year. It's like I said, it's great to see him pop in a movie here. And except as far as the cast goes, the cast was actually a stellar cast. You had Jennifer Jason Leigh, Kurt Russell, William Baldwin. We already mentioned Donald Sutherland, Robert De Niro,
JT.
Yep.
So one of the things about this movie that you just made a kind of mention of, and it's kind of curious because it's making me think about some of the other movies we talked about this year and then the 90s. We talk about themes here on Extreme Movie Show. So fire is one of the holy trinities of really bad psychotic behavior, like with animal abuse, and whatever the third one is. And I think it's a lack of empathy. It's weird because we don't think about those things here, but because Silence of the Lambs, when the movie came out, because the book's already been out, the movie came out, that was really made people think about serial killers and all that, because even though there had been a made-for-TV Michael Mann movie called Manhunter, which is actually very good with Brad Cox plays the original Hannibal Lecter. The one by Anthony Hopkins here, I think it's the same year, or it's pretty close if it's not. That really made people interested in, hey, people can be smart if they work for the government. They can get into people's psychology. Let's analyze all the stuff. And that's definitely a change that went on in the 90s in films because, again, good guy versus bad guy. We don't care why the bad guy's bad. He's bad. Let's just take care of it. Why he got bad? Okay, maybe in the 70s and 80s, you start talking about the system and all that stuff like Dirty Harry would allude to. Now you've got a pyromaniac. We don't necessarily need to know why or care about him or this, that, and people spend time about it. It's more of a family drama, which is fine. But again, the problem I'm having with some of the stuff starting to happen in the late 80s, early 90s is just because something's interesting or makes sense in a movie doesn't mean I give a shit. And I've had this conversation with you plenty of times here on Extreme Movie Show when things come up about, hey, I want to like what's going on here. I think what the setup is cool or something's neat about it, but we don't care. And in our recent review of episode 3 of The Old Man season 2, we just talked about that, where the big setup here with his daughter and the supposed 2 or 3 father figures in it is what the story is. It's not about the Taliban or the government conspiracy and all that stuff. It might be interesting, but at the end of the day, we don't care. So I thought in the 90s, a lot of movies like this, you almost got to see where firefighters are glamorized and people go, like that movie Backdraft with Kurt Russell and all. Everybody was in it. Yeah, that made it look sexy. Just like being a serial killer was made sexier.
I don't see it glamorized.
And all that.
It lets you get a peek into what the crap they have to deal with.
Right, on the big screen.
Budget cuts, all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's Chicago, so we know it's crooked.
Yeah, well.
I mean,
New York, same thing too. They said California, but otherwise a lot of places. But yeah, it doesn't help. But because they're short on staff because of budget cuts. Because let's defund the police, let's defund the firefighters. We don't need them as much. Like I said, this is the reason I was really drawn to this movie is because how they explain the black draft. I never knew what a backdraft was. It's a real term. Yeah.
That's cool, right?
And then you see the auction. Basically, it waits there. It's about snuffed out until you open the door, like the guy did in the theater, and then the auction feeds it, and it comes right out, and it hits you. It's like That's freaky. Like, and I've always liked firefighter movies. Without this movie, you never would have got Ladder 49. Ladder 49, which came out in 2004, I believe it was, with Joaquin Phoenix. He's a firefighter, breaks his leg. He's trapped inside a burning building, and they're trying to get him out, rescue him. Like, it's I said, I love firefighter movies, and there's not a lot of firefighter movies. Volcano had some firefighters in it, but I mean, like, you don't see many firefighter movies.
You don't see many public servant movies, right? You don't.
No. The only time you see that is a RoboCop, or it's we own the night, where it's police corruption. It's never really like positive.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I go, it's honestly, it's a safe film. I mean,
yeah,
these are the kind of films that I recognize and go, yeah, it's a good film. But again, if Kurt Russell was not in it, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. Because
I'd still watch it though. Like I said, the story was well done. Kurt Russell does bring a charm to it though. He does, but you could have put Jeff Bridges in there.
True.
It would have been the same because we watched Blown Away. We did another movie with arson and explosions.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good one. People wouldn't talk about either.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of movies from the early '90s that a lot of people don't bring up.
Yeah, and we were trying to capture some of those, and I don't want to call them B-level like they suck movies, but I think on one of our more popular recent votes a few weeks ago, Anaconda had well over 1,000 votes. That tells you, even for the kind of film that it is, the special effects that were done excellent, right? Pretty predictable, but there's a certain charm to it that makes it watchable that, we like to discuss what works and doesn't. So in our next poll for Tuesday night, when you go to post that, it'll be interesting to see not only what films we narrow it down to, but what also people are interested in. This is the clear runaway favorite, and I think it has to do with the fact that everybody does like a lot of the actors in here.
I'll say this, though. If you guys want us to do a follow-up for this movie with Backdraft 2 from 2019 with William Baldwin and Sutherland, let us know in the comment section. I don't expect it to be good. It has about 3 stars, I think, barely, out of 5, whatever.
That's like saying I'd rather watch American Psycho 2 with William Shatner and no Christian Bale. Just saying.
I know. Well, I'm just saying I'm curious though because it could be a bad movie, but we can still have fun with it though. I think we can. And plus it's a John Sutherland movie too.
Right.
And, yeah. So I'm curious what his character got a parole and now is he the main bad guy in the sequel? William Baldwin.
Or did he help him out?
Yeah.
To revenge for his sins.
Yes. Who knows? But dude, this is a fantastic movie. I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, William Baldwin was not usually the Baldwin brothers back in the day, I don't consider them star powers. Like they were in movies, yes, but I don't think they're like celebrity stars,
Yeah, you never say, "Oh, William really knocked out of the park when he played the stoner or this." You just he doesn't own any.
Yeah, it's like Meg Ryan was a big thing too, but then she instantly fizzled. The big stars for me was Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid was in a lot of stuff.
Speaking of Dennis Quaid, I'll just throw this out there in a short list and we'll wrap it up. I've been watching some movies on the side that I might drop a few reviews over here over the next month as we start heading towards the Halloween season. So obviously, guys, if you have any particular ones you want, well, we're going to slant the polls towards that. So we might only have a week or two more of 90s before we get into the Halloween ones. Early quick mention of The Substance, the Demi Moore movie everybody's talking about. They go full camp in the last thing, and it's disappointing because there's definitely something to this, but they don't own it all the way to the end. They kind of make it kind of goofy, and they kind of joke with themselves and like they're their own marks for it. So it's extremely disappointing. The ending is just trash, but it's very interesting how they get where they get. If you're squeamish, I will say, you may not like it. The Low T Skarsgård film from a year or two ago, it was much better for what they were trying to do. This one's just kind of like an in-joke kind of movie. And also, when you were talking about some of these different types of movies that can work or not, this is obviously a decent budget one. I saw one with Lance Henriksen, again, because Lance Henriksen is in it. I love Lance Henriksen. It's called The Unhealer from a couple years ago. Super low micro budget with almost nobody in except for one female. I think they ended up doing something about a guy that gains the powers of healing like God and then dies while trying to heal a boy who, of course, decides to take on those bullies, because if you hurt him, you get hurt
Mhm.
yourself. It's hard to explain, but movies like that exist where they're done really, really well and don't cost a lot. And that's why I like talking about these big movies and small movies, because it's a big movie doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah,
This is a well done movie. If I don't ever watch it again, I'm fine with it.
the only knock I could say is, you talk about, you mentioned the glamorizing. Well, yeah, the glamorizing in the sense that they are not wearing the protective gear.
Yeah, it's almost insulting.
And firefighters have always said in interviews you watch with them, they said 90% of the fires, it's all smoke. You can't see anything. There's zero vis.
Yeah,
it's like going down in the middle of a river while it's running, and all you get is the dirt. You can't see anything. So they really did glamorize with that to make it's Hollywood. Yes, it made it look cooler. Yes.
Definitely a 90s film you should check out, because it was very popular, very well liked by a lot of people too. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I'll watch anything with Kurt Russell in it, absolutely, and a lot of these actors too. It's a good film. It really is. It really is.
Yeah. So Tuesday will be Tulsa King. Look forward to that. We'll be reviewing that, episode 2 of Tulsa King. I look forward to see what you guys think of that episode, and also what you guys if you haven't checked out The Old Man, episode 3, we did a review of that 30 minutes ago. Or 40, actually, probably an hour ago now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Check that out, and we'll see you guys here on Tuesday.
Season 2, episode 3 dropped, and for all 13 of you very interested Forever Night fans, we did an offline review that'll drop, I believe, Thursday night for that, as we continue season 1 with that.
Yep. All right.
Good night now.
You guys know the drill. If you like this movie, and let us know what your favorite part of the review was, do that down below in the comment section, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks for showing up. Bye now.